Coming up on Great Lakes Now. To stock the lakes with muskellunge, you need to catch some muskellunge.
We just spread out. We have to have experienced netters on the boat because you only get one shot at them.
Making solar power in our gray Great Lakes winters.
The ideal conditions are those clear skies facing directly into incoming sunlight, but that doesn't mean that we can't generate in the winter.
And news from around the lakes.
This program is brought to you by the Fred A. and Barbara M. Erb Family Foundation, the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, Richard C. Devereaux Foundation for Energy and Environmental Programs at DPTV, Polk Family Fund, DTE Foundation, and contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anna Seisling. Welcome to Great Lakes Now. The Great Lakes are home to 177 species of fish, a number of which are stocked to maintain populations. Among the largest and one of the most sought after by anglers is the muskie.
Reaching lengths of nearly 6 feet, muskellunge are one of the largest apex predators in the Great Lakes. They are so prized that all the Great Lakes states raise and stock muskie in the waters throughout the region.
Things look very good. We got more eggs than last year, if I had to guess.
Matt Hughes manages the Wolf Lake State Fish Hatchery in Mattawan, Michigan, where each year they raise thousands of Great Lakes spotted muskies.
Muskie are one of those species that struggles to reproduce naturally, primarily from spawning habitat degradation by humans. Unfortunately, most of the spawning habitat that they like is shallow water, weedy, woody debris. And the first thing that homeowners do when they build a house on a lake is get rid of all that. Install seawalls, remove weeds, remove all of the wood, and that's all the habitat that these muskie need.
Hundreds of years of shoreline development have severely reduced the muskie's access to suitable spawning sites.
Oh boy, you gotta love that. I was only 2 eggs off from my first count. That's nice. That means I don't have to do a third. Our goal each year is to rear 40,000 fall fingerlings. And if it wasn't for our stocking efforts, then they wouldn't be there.
Muskie stocking has been going on for decades, but the program has had its challenges. Before they started stocking the Great Lakes spotted muskie, a strain found throughout the Great Lakes, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources stocked thousands of northern muskie, a strain normally only found in the northern regions of the lakes. For decades, northerns were stocked into inland lakes across the state, where many successfully breached containment dams and spread into other waters, and that created some concern.
We knew that they were getting over the dam and getting downstream, and now they were intermingling with Great Lakes spotted muskie, and there was a real potential for those fish to be spawning together. And essentially what might happen there is that it might mess up the native genetics of that spotted strain. So at that point, we deemed the risk too high.
But before they could stock Great Lakes spotted muskies, they needed to find an egg source.
We started looking around the state, and ultimately we landed on Lake St. Clair to Detroit River just because the sheer abundance of adult fish and the very pure genetics that it had.
Then they ran into another obstacle. While the researchers had no problem netting the northern strain, the Great Lakes spotted proved far more challenging. Todd Summers manages the team tasked with catching adult muskie in the Detroit River.
When we switched to the Great Lakes strain and attempted to catch them with the same method, we weren't able to catch them. The fish were a little bit net shy, we want to call it. They wouldn't move into the system.
The researchers would have to try another approach to capture these fish. They chose electroshocking.
And the idea of it is that we push electricity into the river, stun the muskie, and that gives us seconds to collect them, to catch them. And a lot of times they're big, powerful fish, and we don't always get them. We try to adjust the electricity level so that we aren't harming the fish in any way. I would prefer to have them just tickled and we work for them and catch them versus them being hit really hard and not wake up for a long time. You can actually hurt them if you use too much electricity. So we're really careful.
Todd monitors the river daily, and when the temperature reaches 58 degrees, the nighttime collections begin.
Because we have 3 and 4 or 5 boats going out a lot of times in one evening, we just spread out. One of the reasons why we electrofish at night as well is visibility. We can see the fish so much better than you can in the daytime. We have to have experienced netters on the boat in order to collect them because you only get one shot at them.
The teams fish for several weeks, returning to the boat launch each night around midnight to measure, tag, and assess their catch. Ripe adults, those ready to spawn, are moved to a holding pen at a ratio of 3 males for every female. Capturing enough females is one of the biggest challenges.
I think this is our 14th year. We've captured close to 1,500 muskie. We've never pre-caught a female.
By morning, the hatchery team arrives to collect eggs and milk from the pinned adults. Release the fish, and then transport the freshly fertilized eggs back to Wolf Lake. "17 days later, the eggs will be almost ready to hatch. But before they do, each family is placed in a shallow basin where the water temperature is gradually increased over the course of several hours, causing every viable egg to hatch.
If you're collecting eggs over a 2-week period of time, you're going to have a pretty large size variation. That's when it's important that those fish are the same size, otherwise cannibalism will and does happen.
The threat of being eaten by their tank mates continues through the rearing process.
Muskie are, in my opinion, one of the most challenging species to rear. They like a live diet. If you get slightly behind in growth, you look pretty good to the others.
Around the end of July, the fingerlings are moved into large holding ponds outside where they can refine their hunting skills on minnows rather than each other.
We're trying to get our fish as big as we can in the growing cycle that we have. We're achieving anywhere between 9 and 10 inches by that time period.
Fisheries managers across the state help prioritize where the fall fingerlings are stocked, but a small percentage remain at the hatchery until the following spring when they are released into 2 specially designated inland lakes.
The main reason why we're creating inland brood lakes is because of the pure difficulties of trying to capture ripe fish out in Lake St. Clair and the Detroit River. We're talking thousands and thousands of acres.
Brood lakes are important because you don't have to worry so much about disease. We can't take the chance of bringing any diseased fish to our hatchery.
Hopefully by 26, 27, we'll be able to use the 2 inland lakes, and get out of the Lake St. Clair.
Starting a new program takes time, and it's been nice that we've had all this support for this many years for a native species.
For more about Great Lakes fish species, visit greatlakesnow.org. If you live in the Great Lakes region, you know that sunshine is a rarity in the winter. So how can you make solar power in our snowy climate? That's what researchers in Michigan's Upper Peninsula are trying to find out.
To hit ambitious targets for reducing carbon emissions, power providers are embracing solar energy. But in the Great Lakes region, we have winter. Shorter days, gray skies. Can you even make solar power under these conditions? According to Dr. Anna Dearson, assistant professor at Michigan Technological University, yes, you can.
The ideal conditions for solar are those clear skies, solar panels facing directly into the incoming sunlight, and moderate temperatures. But that doesn't mean that we can't generate in the winter, right? Even in overcast conditions, when the direct sun is not available, you're still getting the reflectivity in the atmosphere and anything around you, including snow. So you are still getting some lower power output.
But here at the Michigan Tech Solar Regional Test Center near Houghton, Michigan, which is actually closer to the North Pole than it is to the equator, there's another obstacle: snow. It doesn't take much to keep a solar panel from operating efficiently.
You can still generate electricity with a small amount of snow on the panel, but after a couple of centimeters, the output will go essentially to zero.
And that's what Dearson's team is studying. How do solar panels work in snowy climates, and how can they be made to work better?
And so we think that this kind of research into how to handle snow matters, because we want to get any electricity production that's available.
To get accurate information on how much snow is accumulating on the panels, the researchers have installed a variety of sensors throughout the regional test center's solar systems, arrays of multiple solar panels working together to generate electricity.
We don't want to touch this snow because right now this is an ongoing experiment, and what's happening is we are measuring when the snow would slide off.
Ayush Chitani is a third-year PhD student and a member of Dearson's research team. His research is about optimizing the performance of single-axis solar panels, that is, solar panels that can tilt from east to west to follow the sun throughout the day. He's working on an algorithm that helps single-axis solar panels adjust their positioning so that the snow falls off.
I want to shed snow off the panels by moving them, and I want to know how much of the snow is on the panels at a given time. So when we give it a command to maximum tilt, snow might shed. Or when there is a big storm coming in, we can give it a command to go to the maximum tilt position, which is like either eastwards or westwards. So there might not be as much of snow that can accumulate on the panels.
Winter's short days and gray skies mean that less sunlight is reaching the solar panels than in the summer. But according to Ayush, as long as some sunlight is available and the panels are clear of snow, electricity can still be generated. In fact, the cold temperatures can even help.
The colder it is outside, the better the efficiency for electricity generation on solar panels. Because when solar panels generate electricity, they also heat up. So we don't want too much heat. That's why in desert areas, even though there is too much sun, but if they are like very hot, they will not be producing that much electricity. They work in space, they work in Antarctica. There should not be snow on the panels. So as long as your panels are clean, you can get good electricity.
This regional test center is one of 5 sites in the U.S. that are exploring how a variety of solar panel types operate in different climates. It's here that Dearson's team works with industry partners and Sandia National Labs to study questions about how solar panels operate in the winter.
This is an excellent site that's already set up with meteorological equipment that is provided, and I can use those meteorological observations along with the equipment that I install. We're adding these additional sensors for snow, ultrasonic sensor for the ground depth, a laser sensor for actually what's on the panels, and a radar sensor for what is the type of snow that's currently falling.
So on the top is the laser sensor. What that laser does is measures how much is the thickness of this snow on the panels. There's a camera that looks at the snow always.
Having access to various types of solar technology has allowed Anna and Ayush to test how snow interacts with different types of solar panels. In some cases, snow isn't necessarily a bad thing.
So right now, as you can see, the snow is covering the panels. So these panels are not generating any energy when they are covered with snow. But the thing is, these panels are bifacial panels. So as you can see, the backside is completely clean and they can generate electricity from backside also. And as you can see, snow is very white, so it's highly reflective. So for generating energy from backside of the panel, snow is good. Generating energy from the front side, snow is bad. So it's kind of like a balance.
This test site is meant to mimic operations at large utility-scale solar facilities. Facilities like those run by Consumers Energy, one of the largest power utilities in Michigan, where Thomas Clark is the executive director of Clean Energy Project Development.
Any utility-scale solar project is going to be taking up hundreds to thousands of acres of land, and there's going to be panels all around. So you can imagine trying to go through and manually clear that would be a tremendous amount of work. So anything that's going to reduce that work is going to be helpful.
Thomas says that because of snowfall and the shorter days, consumers' energy can see as much as 70% reduction in solar-generated electricity produced during the winter. If the technology can be improved to operate better in snowy conditions, these changes would benefit both utilities and their customers.
If we can reduce losses that occur in the winter due to factors that are within our control, then that enables us to maximize the production from the limited amount of sun we do see in the winter and ultimately drive down customer costs.
As the world transitions into a clean energy future, Thomas says that any improvements to solar technology means good things for the accessibility of renewable energy.
Solar is very important to the overall delivery of clean energy plan and the country's ambitions to decarbonize the electric system. We're excited about this transformation and look forward to all the innovations that are going to help us deliver it.
In early 2022, we aired a story we called Shrinking Winter. One of the takeaways from that story? The amount of Great Lakes ice cover is way down compared to just 50 years ago. This year, we're having another warm winter. From ice fishing to snowmobiling to sled dog racing, events have been canceled around the region. Brian Moroska is a physical scientist and meteorologist with the Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory.
Well, the current status of Great Lakes ice coverage is very low. We are sitting today, as of this morning, around 6% ice coverage. Normally, we would be getting up towards 40-45% range on average. So we're way below that average value at this point in early February. And it's getting pretty late in the winter to make up some of those losses.
And it isn't just winter recreation that suffers.
Wildlife is also highly impacted by low ice. The Great Lakes are a very large ecosystem, all the way from the microbial up to your wolves and your mooses. We see a lot of impacts with microbial life here in the Great Lakes that like to harbor their eggs in the ice and spawn young in the ice. And so that's when the base of the ecosystem is struggling, it has ripple effects all the way up. So that's definitely a concern.
And while our region has been talked about as a, quote, climate haven, we're clearly not immune to climate change.
The upper Midwest, the Great Lakes themselves, have seen some of the fastest warming winter temperatures in the United States since the early 1970s. All areas are warming, but we have seen some of the greatest increase in temperatures, especially during the winter months. So we're really feeling the brunt of the impacts from these warmer winters here in the Great Lakes. We're seeing more and more years that are low ice years as we head through the decades. And so those high ice years still occur, and we will continue to see those into the future. But the likelihood of seeing a lower ice year, years like we're seeing right now, are becoming more and more likely and more frequent.
You can find out more about our changing Great Lakes winters at greatlakesnow.org. And now it's time for The Catch, where we bring you news stories and events from around the Great Lakes. The state of Michigan has set a goal to be carbon-free by 2040, but meeting that goal may involve a surprising solution: nuclear power plants on the state's lakes and rivers. Sherry McWhorter covered the story for MLive.
The state's Public Service Commission recently received an update on the draft report from nuclear industry consultants who said a new nuclear power station or nuclear power plants will be needed here in Michigan if we want to meet the state's climate and energy goals.
The report concluded that while nuclear energy is extremely expensive, it can produce lots of energy without generating carbon emissions. But Sherry says that the question of atomic energy's cleanliness isn't so straightforward.
For many climate action advocates and even energy industry proponents, yes, nuclear energy is clean energy. It comes without planet warming carbon emissions, but there are those in the environmental justice realm who have equally valid concerns. about the harmful effects of uranium mining on those already marginalized communities, as well as concerns about nuclear waste being so-called temporarily stored at power plants all over America. But in terms of the legal definition, here in Michigan, according to recently adopted law, yes, nuclear energy is defined as clean energy.
There are also economic considerations. Nuclear plants are extremely expensive to build and maintain, but they can also create new revenue for the state and its residents.
It could mean billions of dollars in economic benefits to revitalize the nuclear industry in Michigan. There would be the value of the energy generated, that itself, plus the taxes that the companies pay to local municipalities. There would also be thousands of new and well-paid jobs.
So what's next for atomic energy in the state? Sherry says there are a few things that could happen.
I'd say first up would be the ongoing efforts to get the 800 megawatt Palisades plant back up and running. It would be the first time in the United States that a nuclear power plant that had begun decommissioning was ever returned into service. But that's really just the start.
In the short term, the consultants who authored the report will expand it based on public input and deliver the final draft to the Public Service Commission.
They are expected to have a final draft back to the Michigan Public Service Commission in the coming months. And the legislature is expecting a report due back by the end of April. So what lawmakers do with the information remains to be seen.
Researchers are exploring Lake Erie's harmful algal blooms as a potential source for life-saving pharmaceuticals. Caitlin Luby has the story.
Scientists are looking to Lake Erie and their algae blooms for possibly the next pharmaceutical drug, because a lot of pharmaceutical drugs like anti-cancer drugs and antibiotics, they actually come from nature. The researchers believe that because the cyanobacteria are so tightly packed together, that this creates a lot of competition. So the microbes basically produce toxins that can inhibit or kill each other. So that's kind of why they think that there's a possibility that, the next big pharmaceutical drug could be present in these algae blooms.
The scientists are from the Cooperative Institute for Great Lakes Research and the University of Michigan. They chase the algal blooms on Lake Erie from June through October.
They'll go out once a month and they'll collect water samples. And something that I thought was really interesting is that these blooms, they're not the same throughout the entire summer. So they're actually seasonal and they change a lot throughout the course of the summer. So they go out at different times just to kind of improve their chances that they may find something interesting.
2 of the researchers have found an anti-cancer drug in marine life from the Caribbean. But not much research has been done to look for similar drugs in the Great Lakes.
So far, the researchers have told me that their findings have been promising, but they've also cautioned that it takes a really, really long time to find a promising drug candidate. The scientists mentioned that they didn't believe that a pharmaceutical drug has been found before in the Great Lakes, and it really seems to be a new frontier that scientists as well as some folks in industry are looking into.
While the potential for life-saving medication is a good thing, Caitlin warns that at the end of the day, Lake Erie's algal blooms do more harm than good to people and the environment.
The harmful algae blooms are really problematic. They're harming ecosystems, they're threatening drinking water. So I wouldn't say it's a silver lining, but I would say that it's a great example about how knowledge is really all around us, even in places that we least expect.
And now an excerpt from our digital series called Waves of Change, where we spotlight the diverse perspectives shaping the environmental justice movement throughout the Great Lakes. This time, we talk with Brenda Coley, co-executive director of the urban network and nonprofit organization Milwaukee Water Commons. The group has a Water City agenda that takes an intersectional approach to laying out climate issues and propose solutions for Wisconsin's largest city.
What we've tried to do is have programming that addresses each of those issues at Milwaukee Water Commons. So, for example, you wouldn't necessarily think that water quality is regarding trees, but trees are a significant portion of water quality. It really reduces flooding in the city. and its mental health and public health benefits, reduction of asthma if there are trees that are present. If we have a robust tree canopy, this becomes an environmental justice issue if some communities have more trees than others. And so we have a project called Branch Out, and we're working with planting around 250 trees in Sherman Park area. Now, what's significant or different from this, or really kind of revolutionary, is that we have set up a tree board of community residents to really be tree ambassadors around this issue, and also to help to guide us on where to plant trees and what's needed.
Thanks for watching. For the full interview with Brenda Coley, or for more about any of our stories, visit greatlakesnow.org. When you get there, you can follow us on social media or subscribe to our newsletter to get updates about our work. See you out on the lakes.
This program is brought to you by the Fred A. and Barbara M. Erb Family Foundation, the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, Richard C. Devereaux Foundation for Energy and Environmental Programs at DPTV, Polk Family Fund, DTE Foundation, and contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.